Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Chatting with Asta. It's basically my YouTube series talk show, and I've been using it under lockdown to talk to people I admire, people I have fun conversations with. And today I'm really lucky to be joined by Ryan Larson. He is someone I met through this pandemic through the interwebs, and he is the editor-in-chief and founder of Ghastly Grinning. He is a horror journalist and recently started We Are Horror Zine, and just all-around amazing person. You can see his work in Dread Central, Bloody Disgusting, and we're Scream fans, so that's why I'm right in front of Stu's house today. Anyway, welcome to the show, Ryan. How you doing?
Good. I'm doing very well. Still settling into LA. I just made the move 2 weeks ago. So
Where from?
yeah, Sacramento. I was in Sacramento for 8 years, and I'm a Northern California raised kid from a very small town called Ukiah. Very very small, and then I moved to Southern California, moved back to Northern California, and now I'm back to Southern California.
Yeah, my parents used to take me to California like every summer for I think 6 years of my childhood, and we went to Northern California a lot because they love like Carmel and Del Mar and
Yeah,
Monterey, anywhere
yeah,
where there's a
yeah.
Ghirardelli, anywhere where you can get the Ghirardelli action.
Yep, yeah, the coastal California. So at least you know, because so many people, it's funny. You think like these stereotypes exist, obviously, but like you think that the rest of the states at least knows, because like worldwide, you're like, oh, like I have friends in like Australia and Germany and stuff, and they think like all of California is Laguna Beach and the hills, and I'm like, nope. But you think like the rest of the United States knows that? No, I still have just like friends on the East Coast, and they're like, "Oh, like, don't you go to the beach all the time?" And I'm like, where I grew up, I'm like, the beach is freezing,
Yeah,
so very often, yeah, because it's hella cold. We don't swim in it. Like, even if you go, you're on the beach,
yeah.
so at least you know what that coastal beach is like.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was it was just something we did, and then we alternated and went to Southern California. We would do like San Luis Obispo, San Diego, Encinitas a few times. Just like so. I have kind of a love for all the sides of California, but I get what you mean moving from north to south. It's very different.
Yeah, I mean, my friends from Northern California, and I'm sure people down here too, make a joke that like we're basically two different states,
Yeah,
because it feels like it sometimes. It's just very different, like all the culture. I mean, even in the midst of a pandemic, like I can feel the difference here. So, but I'm excited. I love the weather. I am a big like warm weather fan, so I'm really excited about that. And like I'm closer to my dreams and passions of movies, which is this is where you got to be. So, like I'm excited about all that. So it's been cool. Like learning the area and like living in. I'm in West LA, so it's like when they do panning shots of Los Angeles, it's like that's it. That's where I am. So it's kind of weird because I'm like, oh, I'm. It's not like I'm in LA. It's like I'm in LA. So it's just very
yeah,
different than I'm used to.
yeah. And so you're in LA. I'm in New York. We're like dealing with different versions of the pandemic. You got a little more space, but like,
Yep.
I mean, and in the middle of a move, like that's just like, whew, whew.
Yeah, I know. There's been I'm one of those people, no matter what it is, whether it's like work or professional, like, or just life, I like to it's like, I just throw everything in at once. So yeah, it's been I mean, so my dad passed away in April too. So it was like literally like that, the move, the pandemic, and everyone's like, bro, give yourself some space. And I was like, no, I got this. And now that I'm here and like settling in, I'm like, I told you I had it. Yeah, it was like, it was a lot all at once, all these moving pieces, but like they're finally coming together, and it's actually been really nice. I'm excited about. I know everyone's like, I can't believe you moved during a pandemic, and I'm like, I can't either. But
Yeah,
now that I'm here, I'm really thankful that I did.
yeah. And it brings me to a subject I'd love to talk about more in depth with you is like, I feel like you're really great at being frank when it comes to talking about matters of like, I guess a blanket term would be just like mental health, but like how
Mm.
horror and the horror community and just like art really help you to funnel through certain aspects. And I feel like those of us who deal with like some of the harder parts of that find these kind of pandemic issues as like, yeah, see, this is how I freak out all the time. But now it's real because now everyone's freaking out. So now that calms me down a little bit because now everyone's living in my nightmare. Like,
Right,
so I
right.
feel like one of the pieces that I read that everyone should check out, and I'll put a link in the description, is a piece that you wrote for it's Haw Creek Horror that I saw it on, and it was called "The Horror Cure: Running into the Darkness to Find the Light." And you kind of break down how different films helped you through kind of a mental health crisis.
Hmm.
But yeah, I want you to just kind of like jump in and how that kind of like felt to really put it to paper. I don't know why I'm typing and saying paper.
Yeah, no, no, it was, it's extremely cathartic. I mean, first of all, and I suggest even if you're like not publishing it, I would suggest everyone at least try it to get those thoughts out from here, out to here.
Yeah,
It's just really helpful. Um, but it is something I found. So even before that happened, about like 3 years ago now, I had what almost every human being runs into. I had a mortality crisis where I realized like I'm gonna die one day,
yeah,
and it was to the point where I mean I would come home and just sleep. I would literally go to work and I come home and I just sleep because I'd be like every minute that I'm awake, I'm just thinking about how I'm going to die. So I'd rather just be asleep because at least I'm not stressed.
yeah,
And what pulled me out of that was horror movies. And so a couple of years ago now, almost 2 years ago, my ex-wife left me, and it was a shock to say the least. And um, it definitely was, like I said, I'm very vulnerable. Like I try to be transparent and vulnerable with like things I've gone through because I think it's important because especially I mean, in lots of different cultures, I think that vulnerability is kind of shamed on, and that's one of the main reasons we keep running into these issues where people, where things are happening, negative things are happening because people are afraid to open up about them, so they hold it all in, and then the only way they know how to like release on those things is very extreme measures when they're pushed to the brink. And so I try to be very transparent because I did try to I tried to take my own life, and that was what made me realize like I need to go to therapy. um, which again, anyone might. I'm 31, but I think like anyone, once you make it to like 20, you have so much you need to unpack, like whether or not you've had a privileged life or not, like everyone has stuff they need to unpack. So I'm a big advocate for therapy. But also I just really started trying to embrace that mental health capacity and awareness and transparency because it was something I even ran into like my best friends, like people that are family to me. Even with a lot of them, it was hard to talk about because it is something we so frequently don't talk about, which is wild because you think about it like you go to work and it's like, how you doing? It's like, oh, it's okay. My stomach kind of hurts. Or like, oh man, like I got an earache, but like, you're never like, oh, it's okay. Like I'm having a manic episode, or like, oh, it's okay. Like I'm depressed today, or my anxiety is really high today. Like for some reason, even though like it's mental health and body health, like we talk about one and not the other. And I was like, we need to change this. And like, so even if it's just I do try to take more proactive measures, like I donate to a lot of those things. And before the whole COVID thing happened, I was working on launching my own charity with everything that will go back into effect eventually. But like the big thing is just being open and transparent. And I wanted to share my story,
yeah,
and the big thing for me is like obviously everyone grieves differently. And so my hope by sharing my story is letting the people who do connect with that, maybe they can find some resonance um, and find a connection with that. And even if they don't, maybe they feel more comfortable with looking for that somewhere else or asking other people if they've experienced that. I had someone ask me once, they're like, "So what movies do you suggest for grief?" And I'm like, "It's different for everyone, you
Yeah.
know? Like my grief is different than your grief, and the way we process trauma. So those movies that are mentioned in that article are specifically tailored for me. But I do think horror and art in general are such a great way to deal with that. Like you can find so much help with it because, and especially horror, because horror is right. You know, it's about killers and it's about monsters and it's about these things. But really, what those are just physical manifestations of our anxiety or our depression or all these things that like people like you and I or everyone else in the world, like these things that we deal with every day. And now we're going like, yeah, that's what it feels like. Like, you know, with when Ghostface is chasing our teens around and they're looking behind, like even out in the middle of the day now, they're watching their back because they feel like the other shoe's always about to drop. It's like, yeah, that's what anxiety feels like. Like, you know, that's what I feel like every day. So and you know, I just think like horror in particular targets that um a little more than most cinema, although I do think there's catharsis to be found in almost all forms. But I do think like horror, that's why I've embraced it so heartily because the subject of the genre is already, it's making itself so available to so many people who probably feel the same way as I do, anyways. You know, the people who love slasher movies probably have anxiety just like I do. And my hope with that article and with the way I try to carry myself on like Twitter and stuff is you're not alone. That's the main message. Like, you want to talk to me or not, that's fine. I am always open and like here for you, and I'll do my best to empathize, and like and be a like a rock for you if you need it. But like really, the main message, like when I put that stuff out there, is like you're not alone. You know, no matter what you think, you feel like you're the only one experiencing this or feeling these things. Like that's never the case. You know, and that's why even though everyone does grieve differently, like I do encourage people like look for the people who have the same movie favorite movies as you, in horror, because that trauma that is carried within, you know, like you look at something like Hereditary, and like really the people who connect Hereditary probably have had forms of like familial trauma. You look at like, you know, like you can get heavier with like some of the themes in, you know, like Midsummer or Revenge, or you can get much lighter with themes carried in like slasher movies, which they're not all light, but you know, like they're not necessarily as heavy as like those ones. But like there's just so much to unpack in horror. So like I have just found the experience I've had has been so wonderful, that I'm like, I want everyone to feel this.
Yeah.
Like that's what I want. Is I just want. I feel so lucky to have found the people I have found, and I keep making new friends who are all like wonderful people, and we can. Part of the reason we get along is because we deal with similar things, and so I want everyone to have that opportunity, which is why I try to be as open as possible. It's like, hey, look at this stuff I have to deal with, like that. And you know, then it's awesome when people can empathize with me, but it's even more awesome when people come in. They're like, I went through this thing, and this movie helped me with it because now suddenly I'm like, I've never had to experience that, but these people over here who don't know you but know me are reading this now, and now they can reach out to you.
Exactly.
Um,
And
yeah, and that's why I just think,
that's how you and I connected,
what?
was Twitter, through just like enjoying, I think it was Dude Bro Party Massacre 3. And
Yep,
it's like, it's just so fun to watch something. And it's almost like being able to read the same code, because like horror fans, we watch something, we know it's not just about what's blatantly in front of you. We know that there's all these little subtexts, and there's like references, and there's cultural significance to art. And And then when you get to do a tweet-a-thon or tweet-along or whatever, you discover other people are like, yeah, I noticed that too.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm a part of a lot of like, fandoms. Like I'm your traditional like nerd geek, whatever. Like I love comic books and I love movies in general and I love professional wrestling and underground hip hop and all that stuff. But one of the main reasons I've always loved horror and I always come back to horror is, yes, it has its problems. Every genre is problematic. Like every form of entertainment has it. Like that's just inherent with, humans. We're not perfect. It's going to happen and we will always have room for growth and opportunity. But horror so much more has embraced the idea, to me at least, of you like that thing too? Yeah. Let's share the things we like. Like, let's talk about, you like that thing? I like this thing. Have you seen it? It's like, no, but I want to because you like this thing I like. And so that's why I love the genre so much. It's like, I love going on, and it's wild because, horror movies obviously have been around about 100 years, but like horror didn't really hit its stride, had its like bump in the 30s, but didn't really hit its stride until like the 80s again. But there's still, even within 100 years of cinema, you think you found it all, right? And then you're like, I really love this slasher. I really wish there was another movie like it. And then someone comes along and you're like, yep, there's this like weirdo gonzo horror movie from 1970 whatever that's just like it. And you're like, what? And like you get to like geek out over that. So that's one of the main reasons I like really just gravitate towards the genre, is because not only does the subject matter appeal to me so much, and the idea that like it really is about a lot about people who feel like they're the outsider. Like I love that idea, and I think that's why like there's interesting dilemmas that has created now in horror, but like it's always been such a like the outsider genre, and like I love that it brings in like people who have often been socially like misfits, but also it's just a passionate genre. Like everyone who's in it, every genre has their gatekeeping, and it sucks to see, and I hate it. But like more than most, I'd say horror is the genre I found where instead of being like, I like that before it was cool, it's like, no, you like that? Well, check out, here's like 20 other things that you also might like.
Yeah, it's like the improv rules, where they say yes and. So you like, whenever you go through talking about stuff you like, it's like, yeah, you like that. Well, you'll also like this. And it's always an extension. I've never seen anybody retract in the same way that I do with other, like you said, other fandoms. But it's interesting you say like, like the outsiders and all that, because I feel like out of a lot of reasons that I like started this show, one of the things that really like drove me, whether or not it seems like it or whatever, is this need to kind of put a spotlight on people during a time when like they are not being seen in the way they're used to, like during film festivals or screenings or whatever. And I feel like you are such a champion for putting a spotlight, or just like a yes and, not just for horror films or whatever, but you're like, oh, you want to see a really badass like LGBTQ like writer who knows her shit when it comes to vampires? This person, like you like, I look to you when I want to know who to follow or who to like consider in my taste making. Like it's like this new thing where I'm like, I wonder if Ryan Larson thinks this person's cool. Oh, he does. Okay, cool. So like that's, I don't know if you want to add that to your like list of things that you have, but like I consider you like the person that sees people. Like I see you is like a Ryan Larson idiom,
I'm very flattered and honored. Thank you. I mean, I think that there, and I do try to do that, and that is specific to last year was really, really hard year for me, with like everything that happened, and literally on the new year, I decided, I was like, I want to start this year really strong, and I just like I was unaware of what we were all like, what was coming. But I was like, I want to start this year really strong. So on New Year's Day, I was like, I'm going to highlight someone every single day that I can on Twitter. I'm a little behind like the move and everything, but like I'm up to like 200 and something people, different person every day. And the main reason I did that was, I mean, there's a couple different reasons, but like the main specific reason is, again, I never want anyone to think they're alone. And so I wanted to make sure to do everything I could to make sure that people felt heard or felt seen.
Yes.
Because I think that's so important. A lot of the struggles I've run into, like myself and then my friends, a lot of them come from that like feeling of it's so like isolated, and it's you feel like you're alone and you feel like no one cares. And like I try to even like I usually try to message people anytime I see that anyone's having a down day. I try to message them and just let them know, like, I see you, and
Yeah.
like whether you want to talk about it or not, like I'm here for you. Never think that you're in this alone. And that's one of the reasons I try to bring people up and boost them up is, um, I want people to realize that they're important, whether they think they are or
Yeah.
not. Because they are. And like a lot of that comes from my own feelings of inadequacy. Obviously, like I had a lot that I had to deal with, like when something like a significant other leaves you, you wonder like, what did I do? Like, why am I not enough? And it took a long time to come to terms with the idea that like that wasn't the case. There were other things involved.
Yeah.
It's not that I wasn't enough, we just weren't for each other, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But that feeling made me realize, I'm like, God, like that was one of the worst feelings I've ever had in my life, was walking around for days feeling like I was not enough for this person. And so I was like, what can I do to even if it's a day at a time, a person at a time, make sure people don't feel that way. And so that's what I just started doing, is really trying to highlight people and make sure that they're seen in a way of like not just like, I know you exist, but like I really try, when I do things like that, I really try to go through their Twitter and like get to know them the best I can through Twitter. Be like, what are they into? What are they passionate about? What's their goal? What's their drive? And like highlight those things, because like I want them to be excited about that. Like I have a friend I made through there recently who she writes like fairy tale erotica. And I'm just like, didn't even know that was a thing. But like, I'm like, but that's your passion. And so like, I read a couple of them and I was like, yo, this shit's really good. Like, it's really well written. And like, so it's like, that's what I wanted to highlight. Cause I'm like, that's your dream. Like, so you're a cool person, but I also want to tell you like your thing that you're doing, chase it, because like you're good at it. And like, I want you to know that this, like someone's reading this and like someone thinks you have it.
Yeah.
And again, yeah, and again, I do that. Like, I was lucky. I've had a lot of people in my life to tell me to do those things. Like, that have been like, Ryan, like you're good at this, chase it. And it's like, okay, now I need to pay that forward.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah. I mean, that's where that comes from. Is just trying to make sure that people understand, and because when you reach out once, that's all it takes. I'm very like, I consider myself very lucky and fortunate that I've had a lot of those people wrap back around weeks, months, like way later, and be like, hey, can we talk? Like, I
Yeah.
know you always say you're there. And it's like, yeah, that's why I told you. And like, whether you want to talk in the moment or not, like, the main goal is that, when you're in that moment where you feel alone, you can go, well, Ryan said he talked to me. So let me see if Ryan wants to talk.
Yeah, and I know that, like I had a lot of friends when I started this show, for instance, like reach out and like tell me like this is so great or I love that episode, and it didn't. It's not like it didn't. I didn't love hearing that from them, but it meant so much when I heard it from like you, for instance, how you felt about this, because I don't know you as well. So to hear it, to be affirmed by someone a few degrees away from you, it means that it's not whether or not I think the show is good. It's like, is the message out there? It seems that the
Mhm.
message is out there because this person is like noticing that the intent behind what I sought out to do is reverberating. So it's such an affirming thing, and it's so important because especially like in regards to mental health, like some of us are more warriors when it comes to dealing with the extremes. Like I've been suffering with bipolar disorder for years. And I actually joke more so often that my family and friends have been suffering with my bipolar disorder, because I haven't always been suffering. Sometimes I'm like totally fine, and I'm shooting like 29 episodes in 6 weeks. Like, and people are like, "Is she okay?" um,
Yeah.
But like it's a it's important to know that while we may be those warriors, other people have, maybe because they're privileged or a certain point in their life, they've never experienced the level of trauma that this particular situation has put the world in. So their whole worlds and their abilities to be seen, they don't get to go to the coffee shop and flirt with the barista and you feel noticed. They don't get to talk to their boss and get like, it's like, so it's important. It's important to like use social media as a tool for affirmation and validation in the true sense. And I feel like you're doing
Right.
that. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is the goal. And like, I do think I see a lot of people, it's just funny. I see a lot of people try to disregard their own, um, like, like they try to disregard their own trauma because they're like, but it's not as bad as the other people. It's like, don't level set things like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Like, trauma doesn't know, like it doesn't go out and like, we're going to hit you harder than this person. Like it affects everyone, and grief does, and like all these things. So like, that's another reason I try to like really reach out, is because there are people out there who are never going to come forward and say they're going through something because they feel, well, one, there's a lot of people who just like that itself causes anxiety, right? Like, oh my God, I can't talk about this. And there's a lot of people who are like, well, what is mine? And like in comparison to the world, like what does mine matter? And it's like, it still matters, because like that's how it's affecting you as a person. And so that's why, again, I try to do the daily of just like hitting different people. And then like, I really try to reconnect and touch base with people. It's kind of scattershot, but I'll just like reach out occasionally too to like random people, be like, hey, how are you doing? And I think that matters a lot, because people aren't going to come forward to you a lot of the times. I'm really bad at it, actually. I'm really bad at asking my friends for help. Like coming forward and being like, I'm having a bad week. Like they usually have to ask me like, are you good? And I'll be like, no. But knowing that, I try to reach out, like reconnect with people, or just reach out to random people and be like, hey, like just want to see how you're doing, because I know a lot of times like they're not going to come forward and say something.
yeah.
And they're not going to like take that step, that initiative to like come forward. So it's like, okay, I have to do that, which is fine. It's just, and then the hope is that I can motivate others to do it too, because like I am just one person, and I wish I had all the hours of the day to like reach out. Like, I mean, if I could, I'd reach out to every Twitter follower I had every day and be like, yo, you good? Like,
I feel
because,
like in a
because
sense you are, because what you're doing is you're setting an energy and a tone for like an overall attitude to have. And I feel like it does do a little bit. It's the pay it forwardness of that kind of
Mhm.
action. And like the more you get to know people, the more you get to understand certain things. And I have friends who know that when it seems like from the outset of social media, or like the frequency of calling, if things seem too perfect, they always reach out to me. They're like, "Are you okay?" Because like I feel like this might be a construct, and I just want to check in. But because I don't, I'm a pretty private person, believe it or not. But I find that I like to leave that gate open, like this like kind of open, vulnerable thing, so that people know that I'm not perfect, and that means that you being not perfect is also fine, and that don't worry about it. And because like people, social media can present a problem for people if they don't understand toolkits of coping with their mental health. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's like,
Yeah, no, that totally tracks. And it's, everyone is different, and that's like, I don't expect everyone to go out and just be very open about their own life, because not everyone is built to do that. And that's okay. Like, I'm not asking you to, if you're not like, not everyone needs to air everything online. Like, there are things that if you want to hold them to your chest, that's fine. I try to do it because, one, I'm comfortable with it. Like, I'm personally comfortable with it. It's not a detriment to my everyday. Like, luckily it doesn't cause me anxiety throwing out onto the internet like maybe 10 years ago, but now being like, I'm depressed as shit today. Like, but the main reason I do that is I'm not like, and I think I understand why too. Like some people will think I'm looking for attention or looking for any sort of like, oh, like we're here for you. And like, I love that when people do that and they're like, we're here for you. I'm like, that means the world to me. And I know you are. I am more doing this as a message out to the people when I say things like, if you're going through this, I'm here for you. And the reason I advertise that I'm having a bad day is because I want you to realize like there's no part of me that is like, I'm here for you because I'm great all the time and you're not. Yeah. And so I can be here for you. I advertise that to let you know, like, hey, even when like I try to be positive, I try to be like uplifting, and I still have really down days, and like no part of me is perfect. So don't ever expect to be perfect either, and don't ever think I expect you to be perfect either. Like that's why I do it. It's more like it's just like you said, it's an open door to be like, hey, like if you need someone, I'm here because I'm you know I would assume you're there for me, and so like that it's a two-way street. But that's like really important to me too to get that message across because I never want to be like everything in my life is great and so I'm here for you because like I'm not like I don't have anything I have to worry about. It's like no,
Yeah.
like no one's life is like even the most like privileged wealthy people have stuff that they're like is going on like, and it's we just need to be more cognizant and aware of that, I think.
Yeah.
And
And
so that's why I do it.
yeah, sometimes like the idea of like comparison or like perfection is a self-induced neuroses, and it's because you're not presented with the full spectrum outside of someone's like highlights, right? So like
Mhm.
it's an important distinction, and but having said all that, one of the things I ask all my guests to kind of like wrap things up is thinking about all these things that we've just discussed and thinking about what you would want to hear right now. What kind of message would you like to send out to the universe today?
I think my message that I'd like to send to the universe today is pretty much a message that I send out to the universe every day. And like that, the main message is it's okay to not be okay
Yeah.
and that you are never alone. Um, and I really do always think that's the most important thing that I can say is like when someone finally told that to me, the hey, like it's okay to not be okay, I was like, it was like a light bulb clicked for me. I was like, holy crap. Okay. I'm like, it is? I wish someone had told me 15 years ago because like I've been spending 15 years thinking it wasn't. So I think that's just the most important message I can ever put out there is it's okay to not be okay. And whether you need to reach out or not, just knowing that you're not alone is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I sincerely hold that belief, Justin, because I feel like every just in the fact that we're all interconnected. Like there is a certain energy that's out there, especially right now, that feels so palpable that everything that we do like affects the other. And so that
Mhm.
goes with energy too. That goes with intent. Like so keep being amazing. I completely wholeheartedly agree with your message. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was a blast.
Of course. Thanks again for joining me on this episode. If you haven't already, don't forget to thumbs up, comment, subscribe. And yeah, the message this week is you are not alone and it's okay not to be okay. Well, I've got some errands to take care of, Clay. So see you next week. Bye.